Thompson, and I design textiles for fashion and accessories. Travel, as well as the cultural and environmental landscapes of my home in Northern California, have greatly inspired my work. I make prints with bright colors, bold motifs, and graphic illustrations. My drawings and printed fabrics collections embody my passion and enthusiasm for color. My work expresses a willingness to let spontaneity, playfulness, and exploration stand out in the design process. And what motivates me to make art is a desire to express my optimism and compassion creatively. I derive themes based upon my travels and the region and community where I'm from, the Bay Area, California. In my work and research right now, I've looked a lot to the landscape and environment from my home, as well as the legacy of art and design there. The era of mid-century modernism gave rise to emigre artists from Europe, and suburban sprawl and population growth contributed to an architectural renaissance in California. The post-war period retained an aspect of craft and the handmade, and today, emerging designers in California embody sensibilities of sustainability and social responsibility in everything from fashion to technology. So I personally have a background as an anthropologist and a photographer, and this affects my process a lot in that I like to research my theme extensively and I place major emphasis on representation. I'm especially aware of and cautious around issues of appropriation and authenticity. So creating my own body of work and research, I wanted to take a self-reflective approach and study my own perspective and culture. Which brings me to my time as an MA student in fibers, where I've been particularly drawn to the history and aesthetics of mid-century modernism within uniquely Californian design. In the 1930s, there was a transatlantic migration of European artists to many parts of the United States, and a number of European designers and architects moved to California because of the creative potential they saw in a place that had a temperate climate and an openness to innovation in pursuit of democratic values. They brought with them a familiarity of the Bauhaus movement and its emphasis on the use of materials new to design, such as glass and aluminum, that could be assembled to express mass accessibility that transcended national and class barriers. I studied the Bauhaus movement in Germany as an undergrad student, and the confluences of this movement tied to its relationship with uniquely Californian design have inspired me greatly. I created a print collection based off my experience living in Berlin, using the shapes and colors associated with the Bauhaus. At the Bauhaus School in 1923, Vasily Kandinsky circulated a questionnaire, asking respondents to fill a triangle, square, and circle with the primary colors. He hoped to discover a universal correspondence between form and color, embodied in the equation blue equals circle, red equals square, and yellow equals triangle. This is some imagery of Vasily Kandinsky, and a kind of abstracted view of modernist architecture and some graphic design of the Bauhaus in the 1930s. Thinking in the Bauhaus school of thought, I used the primary colors and shifted them ever so slightly to create my own color palette for this collection, and also used triangles, rectangles, and squares. My motifs are based off of city imagery and geometric abstraction. In this printed cotton sateen collection, I created a geometric pattern using architectural shapes and buildings. Moving forward with my interest in the Bauhaus school of thought, I made a UV printed and laser cut rasterized wood project that combined notions of hand and digital craft. The Bauhaus believed in craft as a hybrid space between design and manufacturing, and I wanted to reinterpret this through traditional woodcraft combined with digital technology, which represents the hybrid space. And I also hand carved some parts of the wood. With this project, I was testing the notion of digital replication coupled with handcraft method, which enables reproducible pieces that are each unique. These are images of the UV printer at Gulfstream, as well as the process of doing the hand carving. My digital composition at home is a component of a printed fabric collection. The drawings in the composition include architectural spaces inspired by the Eames house. The Eames were a married artist and design couple based in Southern California, who are most known for their architecture and furniture. The spaces in the famous Eames house in the Palisades are marked by their spacious, open plans, which incorporate nature through landscape design and outdoor living spaces. My botanical illustrations and figures play with the scale of the imagined space. The illustration depicts themes inherent in my work, including the architecture of modernity, the blending of indoor and outdoor spaces, and mixed media textures. And this is a picture of my digital print on silk charmeuse fabric. At Home is part of fabric collection titled Feminine Reverie, which is composed of 8 patterns printed on neoprene and lycra fabrics. I wanted to push the idea of indoor-outdoor space in architecture and make fabric for fashion and soft goods that are used for outdoor activities and hardware. This is a digital print on linen and is part of some fabric I used to create a printed linen collection of bags. These drawings are based off sketches I did while in Northern California from last winter and include indoor-outdoor spaces and flora, as well as micro and macro conceptions of space. And again, here I'm looking at architectural influences and inspiration, and what I'm really interested in is developing those areas of negative space in my patterns and using geometry to do this. With these prints, I used a method of creating a composition like a drawing, and then deciding to zoom in on parts of the composition to create a patchwork pattern that gives the impression of a hypothetical architectural space as patterns for my collection of bags. To create these bag patterns, I drew out various sized rectangles, squares, and pentagons on pattern paper and folded them together to create bag shapes. I learned about zero-waste bag patterning through an internship I did while on break from SCAD. Low waste is a theme in my work as well, and through my digital practice, I aim to make use of fabric scraps or create digital patterns as engineered prints. Through my experimentation process in this collection, I learned how to combine knit and woven structures, as well as creating handles for the bags. Throughout my research this past year, I became particularly interested in the culture of the California landscape, as I've mentioned, and how the landscape affects culture and vice versa. This is some imagery, mood, and color research into my perspective of that California landscape. Richard Diebenkorn is a famous painter whose abstract expressionist paintings of the California landscape became prolific in the 1960s and 70s. Diebenkorn's paintings, specifically the Ocean Park series, which celebrate light and color in California, are a source of inspiration for my printed fabric collections. In this collection, I created an engineered print garment to use as a sort of canvas for the kind of landscape imagery I was creating. The print is a collage of abstract and representational flora, brightly colored shapes and textures. I sought to make an engineered print garment because this is something in fashion that can only be done at a small scale, yet this technique is celebrated for its zero-waste patterning. These are some sketches and colors I was interested in through the process of composing this collection. I like the aspect of bringing flora into the idea of the California landscape, and the flora that I've drawn has kind of a vintage feel to bring out those nostalgic mid-century characteristics. And these are the silk printed patterns that correspond with my engineered print dress. Again, I'm recreating the modernist shapes and motifs as well as the classic floral prints. And my color palette is based on Diebenkorn's Ocean Park series number 27 painting, which was in the previous slide. All of the colors in this collection are completely derived from his painting. I chose to do this because I feel these colors accurately portray my perspective of the colors of the California landscape. So the title of my presentation is Cultural Landscape, which is the culmination of my MA final project and is a print and fabric collage collection inspired by the cultural and environmental landscape of my hometown in the Bay Area, California. The tradition of art and design on the West Coast evokes an unshackling of convention, an optimistic approach to color, and an innovative approach to materiality. In 1976, industrial designer Henry Dreyfuss said, "On the Pacific Coast, there are fewer shackles on tradition. There is an unslackening development of new thought. There is a decided willingness to take a chance on new ideas. My fabric collage and print collection reflect a willingness to experiment with unusual material and serve as an aspirational perspective on West Coast lifestyle and culture. I again referenced Stephen Korn's work with an architectural sketch I did of an Eichler home in Marin County in Northern California. Eichler was known for its distinctly mid-century modern style and for transitioning this aesthetic from residential homes to public and corporate buildings. Eichler's buildings are seen throughout Marin County where I grew up. Through these studies, I was getting a sense for the kind of relationship I wanted my shapes to have to each other in print, in terms of form and color. I'm also fascinated by abstraction of landscape, as well as the role that light plays in manipulating color. On the subject of light and color, I was also inspired by some photographs I was taking in the Bay Area between 2017 and 2018. The sense of light and color that I'm evoking is demonstrated well in these pictures. There's something really nostalgic about them, and I think this reflects the way that I see my home and the general sensibilities of mid-century modernism, which I believe is inherently nostalgic. These are the fabric collages I made as part of my final project. These fabric collages and the studies that follow speak to my concern of combining materiality and my digital craft of creating print and pattern designs. Combining fabrics together, which are different in weight, texture, and color, creates an endless palette of surfaces to produce new work. For my collages, I sourced the fabric from Scrap, which is a nonprofit organization located in a World War II era warehouse in San Francisco's Bayview district. Scrap diverts over 200 tons of landfill each year by providing a space and service for people to donate recycled materials, ranging from arts and crafts to home improvement. I sourced from Scrap because the materials I chose from this place reflect the environment in which they are situated, which is San Francisco. So in this sense, the fabrics are a lens into a kind of cultural landscape I'm looking at. Something else I thought about is how textile art made from recycled or reclaimed goods is a testament to the versatility offered by making use of stuff that has already had a life. So by sewing this fabric into a different context, I gave it a new life and purpose. My process in making these collages was very free. I created the compositions thoughtfully based off my imagery of buildings, landscapes, and city architecture. However, the real fun part of the process was layering fabrics, working with transparency in the various textiles and weights of the material. Compositionally, my goal was to create a variety of textures within one collage. Most importantly, color was a driving force for my process. I was drawn to monochromatic palettes within the collages, and my penchant for pastels and light, bright, natural colors reflected the kind of landscape I am referencing. So here's some close-up pictures so that you can see the shapes and how I layered the different materials. I set up rules for my collages during the making process, which I did end up breaking at some points, but they were basically that the collage had to be no more than 15 by 15 inches, that I could only use about 4 to 5 colors within each composition, and that there were no repeating elements, and that also I could only use one material only once within each composition. And I found that with respect to abstract expressionist painting, that some of these themes and some of these rules were just recurrent. And since this was the language I was kind of interested in, I wanted to have those set rules for making the collages. I also see these as mini assemblages. An assemblage is something I'd like to continue pushing in my work in the future. I would also like to create drawings and paintings with this work to further push the work as a source for creating even more new content. So with these collages, much like my laser cut and handcrafted wood projects, which I showed earlier, I was interested in combining materiality and the digital. I created a print and pattern collection based off of the collages, and I began using drawing and painting as a way of conceiving the prints, but quickly realized I was much more interested in using scans of the fabric to create faux textures and interesting surfaces. This is a digital sketch of some of my initial work thinking through how I was going to incorporate that digital aspect with this very handmade source material. I used geometric abstraction patterning as well as the same color palette to create a cohesive collection of 6 repeating patterns and 2 placement prints. These are digitally printed on 100% organic cotton canvas. My choice to print on this type of material reflects my initial inquiry of looking at Bay Area landscape painters and viewing collage as a third space between 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional objects. Here's some close-up pictures of my prints. And in some cases, what appears to be an applique fabric piece is actually a digitally printed component of the work. In moving forward with this work, I'd like to experiment with post-production processes like applique or embroidery to again push that relationship between the hand and the digital. These are some digital flats of my final prints as well as a collage piece. My work is currently installed in Pepe on the West Stairwell if you're available to come to our graduation show on Thursday. Thank you so much for coming this evening.